Good morning and welcome to Business Morning. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Nigeria will today receive almost 4 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. They are being supplied under the COVAX facility, a World Health Organization coordinated program to bolster developing countries' access to coronavirus vaccines. Ahead of the delivery of this first batch of the vaccine, the federal government has rolled out a special strategy to track the vaccination process in the country. The strategy, codenamed Teach, also hopes to enable government have a rich electronic database of all eligible citizens for vaccination. Meanwhile, health workers are to be given priority as the first beneficiaries of the COVID-19 vaccine when the government begins inoculation Friday, March the 5th.
Well, good news, I would say,
good news.
To Nigeria. But what matters is how well we are able to, give these vaccines and ensure that it gets to the right people.
The right people,
I mean,
yeah.
Since there are a limited number of these vaccines, the way we manage it matters a lot.
Exactly.
And I'm sure this will definitely help in propelling the economic growth that we all look out for.
Yeah, it's about time.
And a troubling situation rearing its head in the country is the issue of fuel scarcity. Abuja, the nation's capital, is again witnessing long queues of vehicles as motorists struggle to buy petrol. This comes against the backdrop of speculations that the pump price of the product may be increased. Although the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, in a statement rules out any increment in price of the product, its availability in many filling stations in Abuja is, however, becoming a matter of concern. Let's watch this.
Long queues of vehicles waiting for petrol return to the capital city. Some motorists have been on the queue since the early hours of today without hope of buying petrol in sight. At the NNPC filling station in Guzapi, there are 10 pumps, but only 2 are dispensing fuel at the time of our visit. The product is sold at 162 naira, but attendance is slow. A situation which motorists find frustrating as they wait under the scorching sun.
We'll be here for 4 or 5 or 6 hours without fuel. And we're a nation that may be the 4th largest world producer of crude oil without without fuel in our country. And it's extremely very sad. Very, very sad indeed.
The other filling station before we left, they are selling the fuel 178 naira per liter. Now, some people came there and closed the filling station. We now left there and came to this filling station in NNPC at Sokoro. Now, actually here, they are working well, but the queue is much.
At Area 3, the situation is the same. Long queues and motorists waiting endlessly. It's also rowdy, and COVID-19 safety protocols are scarcely observed. The pump price here is 163 naira. But only a few pumps are dispensing as motorists allege shady moves by some persons working at the station.
See, I'm there. If I give 500, you won't enter. If I give you 500, you're not allowed to enter.
It's however a different site at Area 2, where this major petrol station has shut its gates against motorists, saying the product is no longer available. And at the central area, the petrol station located opposite the NNPC tower has a long queue of vehicles waiting to be served. Some, however, seem to have lost hope as they patronize black marketers who make brisk sales of the product. Officials of the Department of Petroleum Resources are, however, not seen monitoring the situation, as at the time of our visit, and efforts to reach them proved abortive as they would not pick their calls nor reply messages sent to them. Meanwhile, a statement released by the NNPC management dismisses claims of scarcity and price increment. It also cautions petroleum products marketers against hoarding. It's not certain when the long queues at the filling stations in the nation's capital will vanish or reduce and normalcy return. But one thing is certain, that if nothing is done to check the situation, both commuters and motorists may face tougher situation in days ahead. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Honestly, Ladi, this is a situation I detest to,
Long
see
queues.
again, having to queue to buy fuel. I really don't like the situation. But in as much as the NNPC is saying that we're not going to increase fuel price.
Marketers are saying something
No,
else.
but even at that, price increment at this point, I guess, is inevitable considering the trend in the global
oil market. Exactly.
Oil market. Although today we saw that the prices went down. You have that story.
Yeah, so I mean, the oil prices fell more than 1% on Tuesday, extending losses that began last week as investors wound their long positions on concern that OPEC may agree to increase global supply in a meeting this week. Chinese demand may be slipping. Brent crude dropped 78 cents to $62.91 a barrel after losing 1.1% the previous day. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude slid 74 cents to $59.90 a barrel, having lost 1.4% on Monday. Investors are worried the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, a group known as OPEC Plus, will boost oil output. The group meets on Thursday and could discuss allowing as much as 1.5 million barrels per day of crude back into the market. OPEC's oil output fell in February as a voluntary cut by Saudi Arabia added to reductions agreed to under the previous OPEC Plus pact. Reuters survey found ending a run of 7 consecutive monthly increases.
In the meantime, a leading management consultancy firm, McKinsey & Company, expects global oil demand to reach 100 million barrels by 2025. In its review for 2020 and latest outlook for 2021, the U.S.-based firm says demand for crude has partially recovered since April 2020, but still ended the year approximately 9 million barrels per day below the 2019 level, while continued COVID-19 related lockdown measures in January this year has kept it around 6 million barrels lower. However, the company explains that the demand would depend on the duration of lockdowns and the pace of global GDP recovery. Meanwhile, McKinsey mentions that current intervention by OPEC Plus will be sufficient to help balance the market this year, prices remaining at a sustained level between $50 to $55 per barrel over the next 4 years.
Well, we'll talk about this more on Commodities Market Update next. Do stay with us.
On Commodities Market Update now, we're being joined by Nosike Nwajide, research analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Good morning, Nosike. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Good morning, always my pleasure.
Good to have you.
Well, while Nigeria wishes to have oil price remain, higher, because of revenue,
Obviously.
the implication on the consumer is what we have seen now rearing its head. We have to pay more. Okay, so are you concerned about this trend that we are seeing?
I wouldn't say I'm concerned. I think it's just the reality of things. I mean, if you say that we're deregulating the downstream sector of the Nigerian oil industry, it means that the prices will be determined by demand and supply, global oil prices, all the other costs will be cost reflective. I mean, the price of PMS will be cost reflective. If you have global oil prices around $63, $65 a barrel, you ask yourself, okay, what do we currently pay? We pay about $162 and thereabouts. And you ask yourself, okay, at the point of determining this price we pay, what were global oil prices at the time, and what exchange rate was this computed or calculated with? It was about $50 a barrel, thereabouts, officially, because since the NNPC is the only importer of refined petroleum at this point, they get the official exchange rate about $3.97, so to speak. So at this point in time, global oil price is about $63, $65. That's an extra $13, $15 a barrel. That's an increase of about 30%. Then have the official exchange rate where we hear that it's been adjusted officially to 410, but we can't exactly confirm this. So you have those two parameters moving upwards. So it's only common sense that this reflects in the price of PMS. And if you do that computation, you arrive nothing less than 200 naira per litre. The marketers know this, and they've come out, they've been vocal about, hey, look, the prices should be about 230. And
even the government
the
keeps
NNPC
saying,
is categorically saying that it is not going to increase in March. So you ask yourself, okay, you've taken away subsidy. You say you've taken away subsidy. You've made no provision in the 2021 budget for subsidies.
So
where,
now, is it possible that NNPC might just be paying subsidies somehow?
There's obviously something they're not telling us. If you say that you're not going to increase the prices, and you say that the prices will remain at 162, 165, then there's this markup that is missing somewhere that somebody has to be accounting for. And at this point, since they're saying that it's not them, it's either the markets as are bearing. It doesn't make sense on paper. So somebody's bearing the cost somewhere. That's what it means. If you are going to remain at 162, 165, somebody's bearing the cost. That's just it. So,
okay, we're talking about economic growth, but this will surely affect productivity.
Yeah, obviously. It's something that, like I said, it's a new reality. I mean, the moment we decided that we were going to deregulate and have more cost-reflective prices, it's something that Nigerians should have been prepared for. And the pains, I mean, eventually we will have domestic refining. And even when we have that domestic refining, that cost... That is
until perhaps next year when Dangote refinery probably comes on board.
When that happens, there's no guarantee that the cost would be lower. I mean, it may be a little lower because of there's no extra shipping costs from overseas. It's refined domestically, it might be piped to different depots nationwide. So you have a bit lower cost. But as long as the global price of oil is rising as it is. We'll always
what should we actually be praying for? Is it for the global oil price to be going up so that we have enough revenue, for the economy, or for it to come down so that at
we
least
can afford the fuel?
Exactly.
The big picture is actually increasing productivity, increasing Nigeria's output, so that we have a stronger exchange rate. And a stronger exchange rate will mean that these prices will drop. That's what it means.
All right, OPEC Plus meeting, of course, is scheduled for this Thursday, and the expectation is that they might probably taper on their production cuts, and that would, you see that changing the current situation in the global oil market? Yes.
Okay. There's concern among the market traders. Feel like there's possibility they're going to consider the 1.5 million barrels of oil that they could possibly put back in the market. There's this Chinese demand is not. I mean, for this is the lowest it's been. Chinese manufacturing, in 9 months. So there's some concern about Chinese demand, and Chinese demand is where demand has really come from. That's really demand that has driven oil prices. Then on the supply side, how Saudi Arabia. When the rest of OPEC were saying, okay, we need to ease on cuts, Saudi Arabia came in February and said that they would remove 1 million barrels of oil from the market. So that's really propelled the market. So now that we have this meeting, is it possible that the Saudis want to say, okay, no, we're no longer taking off that 1 million barrels of oil? So, I mean, right now there's a lot of uncertainty. And until that is resolved, markets will still be wondering, okay, what's going to happen? We have a situation where ordinarily oil prices should be bolstered by the announcement that in the US, the stimulus, 1.9 trillion stimulus, has passed Congress, so it's on its way to the Senate. So these things ordinarily would prop up oil prices, but you have a lot of what I'll call uncertainty as to, okay, what's OPEC going to do? We know that the Russians want to increase output. OPEC is looking over its shoulder at U.S. shale production, given that higher prices incentivize production of U.S. shale. And if you keep cutting production to prop up prices, you give away some market share to these U.S. shale producers, and they don't want to go back to the scenario of 2015, 2016, where they lost that much market share to that. So those are their major concerns.
Another worrying trend now is this global food prices are rising.
Okay.
That's a major concern.
Yes,
right?
it's a major concern. Now, the fact that you have ultra loose monetary policy globally, the advanced economies have cut down interest rates to near zero to boost stimulus for global economic recovery. You also have commodity prices rising. Now, the global economies are awash with liquidity. That increased liquidity is looking for where to go. So if you see that commodity prices are rising, it's not just oil, it's cocoa, it's copper, it's food, it's grains. So when these grain prices are rising, their incomes are not rising to reflect these, the recovery is still in its early stages, so incomes haven't risen. Incomes fell compared to last year. Incomes have fallen. So you have lower incomes and you have rising food prices. So in the more advanced economies, they have more room to bear the brunt of these increases, because their foods they consume more processed foods. But in this part of the world, you simply go, you get grains, your cassava, your corn, and you process, you just very little processing and you consume. In the advanced economies, it goes to different layers of processing where these processors can decide to absorb the cost, but we don't have that leverage in this part of the world. So it's more telling in the developing countries, and they face a
All
food
right,
crisis
we
and
have
poverty.
seen the blockade of food coming from the north that is really disrupting a lot of things. So you take us through the price movement and how the prices are moving and how this particular situation has impacted some of the commodities.
Okay, obviously the blockade of food from the north is beef. The first thing you look at is beef, then onions, tomato, even pepper, those perishables. Now the blockade is having a very disruptive impact on food prices. Some have even doubled. And the fact that these things are perishable, I don't know how long this blockade is going to last for. It's a standoff. They gave the government a 7-day ultimatum, and the government is supposed to have, stepped up to meet their demands, or they would withdraw. I think that the trailer loads of food are being stopped completely. And some of their demands are, should I say, not exactly as ridiculous as people may see them to be. They've asked for their trucks because they're being harassed by security agents, so to speak, and that adds to the cost of their goods. Some of their demands are not as rash as we think, but this is having a devastating impact on the price of onions, price of tomatoes, price of beef, and the fact that these things are perishable, and Nigerians in the south may decide to. I mean, is it cheaper now that we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? Is it cheaper to buy from across the border, Cameroon or Cotonou, as opposed to having those expensive products up north? So my side to decide to key into supply chains in the West and disrupt the ones established supply chains here. I mean, in the long run, it might even be better and cheaper, and the farmers up north. But for now, we know it's temporary, but it's something the people down south will consider. The farmers up north are probably the biggest losers of this because their goods are perishable. If you don't supply them to the south within a certain time span, you're stuck with them. You say you're taking them to Niger.
Because I read somewhere that they're selling, to neighboring countries. Those
neighboring countries already have their supplies being met by other people, so they will have excess. And I don't need your product. At the end, your products would spoil, and I'll have no use for it. You lose out completely. So it doesn't make any sense. Your standoff has to end at some point. Your bargaining chip is not is perishable, so to speak. Yeah. So you don't have that much of a bargaining power.
All right. Thank you very much, Nosike. Okay. After recording 0.11% growth in the fourth quarter of 2020, sustaining the growth trajectory remains very important. We'll be talking more about this after the break.
GDP growth had a swift rebound during the fourth quarter of 2020 as it expanded by 0.11% after 2 consecutive periods of negative growth. The rebound in growth was driven by agriculture and ICT, as these sectors grew by 3.4% and 14.7% respectively during the fourth quarter of 2020. Contraction in the manufacturing sector declined to 1.5% from 8.78% during the second quarter of 2020. This result is similar to the Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, which stood at 49.6 points in December 2020, indicating a recovery of our manufacturing sector and the manufacturing activities relative to a low of 43 points in April 2020, though it still remained below the 50 points benchmark that people will normally say is an indication that we are really moving on in the manufacturing sector. While these indicators above provide positive signs that the economy is on a recovery path, GDP growth of 0.11% indicates that the Nigerian economy still remains on a very, very fragile recovery path. It is therefore imperative that we do all we can in 2021 and onwards to ensure that we build on the positive momentum and strengthen our efforts at stimulating growth. Let me repeat, with the discovery and deployment of vaccines worldwide, 2021 will be a year of massive global recovery, and Nigeria must not be left out. The banking industry, they are here, whether by moral suasion or by force, they will have to participate in this journey. In order to drive and sustain this recovery, therefore, we need to engage in the following broad actions. 1, sustain the accommodative fiscal and monetary policy measures aimed at improving access to finance to households and businesses. 2, prevent a resurgence in COVID-19 related cases. 3, ensure that a significant number of our population is properly vaccinated. 4, improve foreign exchange inflows into our country.
When you look at the GDP per capita for Nigeria and compare it with GDP per capita of some other African countries, you see that ours is still much lower than some other countries in Africa, which shows that the potential is there, for us to grow our GDP to a much bigger size that can help us in the fight against poverty, because Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari is so committed to move as many as 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years. And to achieve this will require growing our economy, much bigger than it is now, making sure that so many sectors are operating at higher levels of productivity. The Biotechnology Society of Nigeria can play very important roles in the area of food security.
The country representative of the WHO, the Minister of Health, and other critical stakeholders in the health sector are in this hall to launch a special COVID-19 vaccination strategy, which the government says will help keep track of the vaccination process. The strategy, codenamed TEACH, also has an electronic portal for the registration of all eligible citizens. The government says it's guided by an in-house vaccination experience as well as those of other countries that have already rolled out COVID-19 vaccines.
In the last 10, 20 years, we've had an average of 6 to 8 campaigns every year. Now that experience is what we're bringing to bear, and that experience is what we're combining with the experiences that we've seen from developed countries to roll out a unique strategy for Nigerians. So today, it is my honor and a privilege to roll out the TEACH strategy. What we have done with the TEACH strategy is really to combine the first world approaches with our context in terms of our experiences with campaigns.
Nigeria expects the arrival of about 4 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine, which is the first batch of the 16 million doses from the COVAX facility. Ahead of the rollout, the WHO is warning against complacency.
It was rightly said, this year is about COVID-19 vaccine. But I would like to emphasize that vaccine alone will not do it. We will need to continue to adhere to public health and social measures until such time that we reach enough coverage to generate herd immunity.
As the preparations for the rollout of these vaccines gain momentum, concerns about how to prevent fake vaccines from getting into the market, as well as how to handle possible reactions from recipients, is also addressed here.
Our work just started because we're going to do track and trace of all these vaccines that are coming in to ensure there is no falsification in the supply chain.
had to sign what you call an indemnification, which means that the producer will not be necessarily held responsible for whatever the effects are. If there are vaccines administered through correct government portals.
Well, with Nigeria set to be technically out of recession after recording 0.11% growth in the fourth quarter of 2020, economic managers, analysts, and stakeholders have been speaking on the need to develop strategic policies to sustain the growth trajectory. They have warned against the temptation to be carried away by the exit from recession. Of course, we're having this conversation with the CEO of Espera Global Corporation, Dr. Glenn Prince Abbey, who joins us now from our Abuja studio. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Abbey, for joining us on the program. Well, today, Nigeria, of course, is receiving its vaccine. And yes, Nigeria is out of recession, but how prepared is the country for further growing the economy?
Well, thank you, Chimeze, for having me here again. It's my delight to comment on this. It's really good news that we are out of the recession, but then this is not time for complacency. This is not time for sitting on our oars. We have not achieved much. We just escaped, the recession. So this is time to put together and implement solid strategies that can actually increase the rate of our acceleration from the escape from recession, I would say. Now, what do we do? First of all, let us look at what some countries, the fact that a lot of countries are doing so much regarding a post-COVID-19 economy. So this is a time to look at various sectors of economy, particularly the growth-enhancing areas of our economy. Now, we're talking about the fact that, for instance, even the vaccines are in now, and that's very good news. All of these now mean that this is a time to start to develop the right strategies for growing the economy. Now, in terms of growing the economy, as I always like to say, we should visit aspects of the production aspects of the Nigerian economy, production in terms of areas that show promise for manufacturing, areas that show promise in terms of various value chain activities that whereby the Nigerian economy can place solid products in the global marketplace, in the African global trade. We need to assert leadership because we're Africa's largest economy, Africa's largest population, and we just escaped recession, which other countries are still in and all that. So this is a time to visit our production enhancing activities. I expect government not to relax, and in fact, it's also advantageous for us also because oil price is also at a comfortable level, and there tends to be some level of growth in terms of oil price. So that's a big advantage for us, and a lot of investments are still being done by the federal government in the areas of infrastructure and all that. So this is a time to actually start to work on various aspects of production that the Nigerian economy can provide in the global marketplace. We have the infrastructure that continues to improve, that there's more and more investments are occurring and all that. How do we build our production? How do we build production in terms of manufacturing, various areas of manufacturing that can enable us put products of international quality, global standard quality products in the African marketplace, as well as, of course, why not, in the global marketplace. So the more of that we do as a country, the more of that we do in a focused way, I expect at this time, because of the urgency of the moment, that there will be an office within, I don't know whether within the president or whatever, where you see Gantt charts of activities in terms of various sectors, the production sectors of economy, Gantt charts. This is where we are, this is what we want to be, this is where we're headed, and this is between those time, this is the level of production we can achieve and all that. So if we put all that in place and put them in some kind of, acceleration mode, you see that what we'll achieve is that within the space of between now and 2021, or between now and the maximum 18 months, you see the Nigerian economy becoming a clear example for growth that can be a case study even anywhere in the world, So I think that the growth enhancing sectors of the economy, this is where the federal government and even state governments should start to visit and see how we can deliver.
All right, Dr. Glenn.
In those areas. That is what will accelerate our departure from the recession. We must ensure that it is accelerated. We should not actually sit on our oars as far as.
All right, Dr. Glenn, at the moment, inflation is at its highest, and household income of common Nigerians is less and less adequate to meet with the needs of the family. What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear you well.
No, I said that at the moment, inflation rate is at its highest, and common Nigerians are finding it less and less adequate to meet with the needs of the family. So I'm wondering, what is your perspective?
Well, the point is that is very true because, so much is happening in terms of inflation. If you ask for my perspective on this, first of all, we can start to understand or review the causative factors, regarding the inflation. One of the major factors, of course, is the fact that, okay, we're coming from the COVID-19 experience. COVID-19 is still very much in place and a lot of restrictions are still on ground. But peculiar to Nigeria are additional factors such as security. The case of banditry and kidnappings and all that, particularly in the northern part of the country. And we have now come to realize very clearly that, of course, the north feeds the country. So now if there is problem of security and the security challenges occur right where the farmers are, a number of farmers are having to pay bandits and all that and kidnappers, they have to pay some fees to be able to harvest and things like that. So these are affecting, the price of food items, and inflation continue to shoot up and all that. I don't know where this will stop. I don't know at what point it is going to stop. But the point is, the federal government has to do something regarding security, because security is no more just security as what we have been comfortably looking at in the past few years. But now even our food security is being deeply affected. So the security challenges of the country in terms of the banditry we're having, kidnapping cases we're having now, is now affecting food security. So the average availability of food for homes in Nigeria are directly affected by the security issues, because the farmers can only do the best they can within the context of what security issues permit them to carry out their activities. So this is a major problem that we are facing. I really don't know how we can get out of this, but government should do a lot. First of all, broaden the security strategy in terms of reaching out in such a way that the problem of banditry and kidnapping, especially as they affect local producers, local farmers and all that, must be addressed urgently. Otherwise, the rate of inflation will continue to go up. Because you mentioned household income, so we are looking what is actually worsening the inflation. The inflation case is actually cost of food items. So food security is affected, and it is from the case of banditry and all that is the major security challenge that we're facing, particularly in the northern part of the country.
Now, the country is also experiencing huge deficit in infrastructure. How do you think the banks, in particular, can support infrastructure investment in Nigeria without jeopardizing their funds?
This is a very interesting case, because what you have asked excites me, because I've always been of the position. I've done lots of consulting for the banking industry, locally and internationally, and we have come to the realization that Nigerian banks need to improve their level of capability and competence in terms of project financing. In the area of project financing, Nigerian banks are not measuring well, because project financing call for a level of patience, a little more long-term than trade financing, okay? So the banking industry needs to start to go through a process of capacity building to strengthen their awareness, to strengthen their lexicon, to strengthen their capabilities in the area of project financing so that they can start to participate more actively in the area of infrastructure investment in supporting the infrastructure aspects of the economy, and that is key. And I'm particularly delighted over the fact that a couple of weeks ago, the federal government announced the formation of Infracore, so Infrastructure Company of Nigeria and all that. And that will help because it will now provide a pool. And in this pool, the commercial banks and other banks, even other funding agencies, other money managers, fund managers across the world can actually start to participate in that. So I think the infrastructure company, the infrastructure corporation that the federal government is putting together is going to help and strengthen the level of aggression, the level of urgency, the level of participation in the area of infrastructure development. Yes, there's still a lot of deficit infrastructure financing. So far, it's the federal government that's doing it all alone, and loans are being taken and Nigerians are complaining. But from my perspective, from what I understand, we are not even anywhere near what other countries like South Africa and United Kingdom and all that are doing in the area of infrastructure funding and all that. Infrastructure funding is the future because it's infrastructure that provides the platform for you to carry out various aspects of economic activities. So with all that we're talking about in terms of production, in terms of manufacturing and all that, if infrastructure is low, infrastructure availability is less than world class, we would also be less than world class in terms of what we put in the global marketplace as products.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Glenn Abi, for sharing your thoughts with us on this program. We always appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. It's my delight to be here with you again. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, we take another quick break, and then when we come back, we do an opening call to London. All right, let's bring in Juliana now to give us updates from London. Good morning, Juliana. Well, ahead of the budget presentation, expectations are that the Chancellor will announce more than £400 million of additional support for the badly hit culture sector and also announce a £150 million fund to help communities take over local pubs. What are the key things to look out for in this budget?
Good morning, Chimeze. Well, goodness me, there's so much. As you can imagine, this is a highly anticipated budget, probably the most highly anticipated in a generation. So there's certainly lots of speculation in the British media as to what will and what will not the Chancellor Rishi Sunak say. He was giving lots of media interviews over the weekend, and there's lots of talk about levelling up with the British people and basically telling it as it is. And what that is that the Chancellor has to he's got a pretty delicate balancing act to try and walk. On the one hand, of course, he knows he's got to offer support to the millions of people that have lost their jobs or lost their businesses. But in the other hand, he's got to balance the books. The government are owing billions, and they're billions of pounds in debt. What we do think is going to happen tomorrow is that, first of all, the job retention scheme, or better known as the furlough scheme, will be extended. It's been extended several times. We're expecting the stamp duty holiday to be extended. That's a tax on what people pay to stamp the sales sheet on their homes. We're also expecting the government to turn generation rent to generation buy. So now, if you're in the UK, you're a first-time buyer, you will only have to put down 5% deposit on a mortgage, bearing in mind that the average cost of a home in London is about £450,000. But it is said to help some people. And then, of course, there's lots of speculation about tax. Where is the tax going to come from? We are expecting there to be an increase in the amount of tax that's paid on tobacco, fuel and beer. Those are levies. And we're also expecting there to be an income tax freeze. And so there is lots of speculation. We won't know until tomorrow, 12:30 local. And of course, I'll be giving you and Laddie all the gist on Biz Inc. tomorrow afternoon.
Conduct Authority is scrapping performance-related pay and bonuses for senior executives and also plans to impose salary cuts after the LCNF investment scandal. How does this address the issues?
Well, some would say it does, some would say it doesn't, but Charles Randall, the chair of the city regulator, thinks it's going far enough, and by doing that, he is making the entire watchdog pay for some of the misgivings that have happened over the past couple of years, particularly under the watchful eye of the current Bank of England governor, Andrew Bailey, who was the chief executive at the time of the LCNF financial collapse in 2019, where about 20,000 people lost £237 million worth of investment in these mini bonds. There's currently several investigations, including criminal investigations, going on at the moment. I believe a couple of people at LCNF have been arrested for fraud. But, you know, some of the statements that have been given to a cross group of MPs over the past couple of weeks have actually been quite damaging. And they do believe that the city regulator didn't act appropriately. Charles Randall yesterday, when he was speaking in front of MPs, did decide that bonuses and remunerations for staff, including pay rises, would stop. And in fact, there could be some staff pay cuts. And he feels that that's going far enough for the regulator to take responsibility for what happened over the years.
So tell me, how are the markets opening up this morning after the PMI data yesterday?
We had triple-digit gains yesterday, which was great considering the FTSE went into the weekend in the red. But today, pretty much open as flat as a pancake, and that's because we've seen a reversal in the commodity prices. Brent crude oil was trading much lower today, so some of the biggest fallers dragging down the FTSE all-share are BP. Their shares are down 2.3% at early trading, and Royal Dutch Shell, their shares are down 1.9%, Chimmy.
We'll get update from you, Juliana, later in the day.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to crypto market. Well, Laddie, what is happening in the commodities market right now also affecting the crypto market? Why are we having the Bitcoin bouncing?
Bitcoin trading at about 48,000 in early trade today. You know, some institutional investors are claiming that Bitcoin is a hedge for inflation. So most of them are buying more Bitcoin at this point so that they can save their assets, you know, because with the stimulus packages coming in, you know, what that does to because of the, you know, price of the dollars. So a lot of institutional investors now are buying Bitcoin to hedge against inflation at this point. Let's look at the market numbers. Market cap, $1.49 trillion, up 6.75%. 24-hour volume, $131 billion. Bitcoin dominance, 60.94%. And price of Bitcoin, early trade, about $48,673, up 5%. 24-hour volume, $54.65 billion. Look at the top gainers now. I have Badger up 52% this morning. Let's talk to Tosi Olugbenga. Hello, Tosi. Hello, Tosi.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Great to have you, Tosi. So I see Bitcoin bounced to about 49,000. What's going on?
Yeah, so we've been having some consolidation recently, and that consolidation is what is expected during every year, you know, especially during the month of February and March, where the Bitcoin price wants to get a reasonable price. Okay, so then it's also good for those who are new investors who cannot really afford Bitcoin at a very steep price. So new investors, it's easier for them to actually come in at this point.
All right. So looking at traders that want to store crypto and trade, You know, we have centralized and decentralized exchanges.
Yes.
What are the pros and cons of each?
Okay, so sometimes last year during the Christmas, there was this centralized exchange in Russia that was hacked by hackers, and about 150 BTC were lost during that hacking process. So it is advisable that when people store their Bitcoin, you can buy on centralized exchanges, but there is something we call MetaMask on Chrome, where you can personally store your cryptos on the blockchain directly with you only having access. And there is no hacker that can actually hack that particular wallet. So that is what is most secure way of actually storing your BTC or every other coin of choice that you are investing in. So that is the best option. But for centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, they are all prone to hackers. Even Binance, the most popular exchange in the world, has actually been hacked before, but it was long ago, and they've been putting up a lot of measures and insurance to also cover a potential possible hack in the future, because most of these things you don't really know what can happen. But when you buy your coin, it is important you move it to private wallets like the MetaMask that you can install on your Chrome browser on your own personal laptop.
I guess that's one of the risks of being your own bank. Anyway, Tosi, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
All right, Chimi, so being your own bank, yeah. Exactly.
It looks so cumbersome understanding the process of this market, really.
Yeah. Because if you lose access to your wallet, it's gone.
That's a problem.
It's gone forever.
All right, can you take me through what's happening to those altcoins?
So we see Engine here, the gaming platform, 77 cents. This one has been going up since last week. It's up 34% today. Have Flow, $28, up 32%. Comp is up 24%. Then we have T-Fuel, that's Theta Fuel. That one is been going up. It was at, I think, 2 cents earlier this year. It's now at 11 cents, up 22% this morning. Let's look at the top losers. We have ZKS, $2.31, down 7%. Phantom has been raging. It got to as high as about 77 cents last week, but it's down to about 50 cents now. But this morning is down 4%. Matic, 22 cents, down 3%. And we have ADA here, Cardano. Cardano, that one has been running all year. It's down 2% now. Maybe people are selling the news, as they say.
Well, I guess with the Bitcoin bouncing now, and you said it's because these investors are trying to hedge against inflation.
Yeah.
So I guess it's still the institutional investors, because
yes, they are the ones pushing the market.
Or $47,000, that's still expensive for an individual, like me.
Or retail.
Absolutely. So perhaps those altcoins might be where to look at.
Exactly. For that alt season when it comes.
Okay. All right. That's it on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thanks for watching.